Everyone. I'm so excited that you're here and that you have taken 30 minutes of your day to be here to talk about the topic of burnout, something that so many of us suffer from, but I don't think we like to address it. So here's how it's going to go. I promised you a 30-minute webinar, and so we are going to start and we're going to stop on time. So the next 30 minutes, get ready. First thing I want to do is I want to let you know who I am. My name is Scott Perkins. I run this little business called Perkins Communications. I am a discipleship coach and a pastoral consultant. I love to see people grow closer to Jesus. I love to help churches enable people to get closer to Jesus. So my impetus for starting this company comes from my 14 years spent as a pastor in several different contexts. I know the rigors of leading people and trying to lead them well. And I know how exhausting that can be and taxing. And I know, because I suffered from it, because it was part of my story, what it's like to burn out and the devastation that it can have on your life. So Perkins Communications was born out of my experience, and I want to help people gain perspective and to live well. So as we go through today, I've got some gifts to give you because I want to add value to your life, and I want to give you the ability to work out the burnout. And so hopefully you see a lot of value here, and you let me know how you're doing. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the box. And when we get toward the end, if we have a few minutes left, I will answer whatever questions that you have. So let's start with some statistics. Recent Barna surveys share these numbers with us, that 71% of church leaders are burned out or suffering from depression. That is an amazingly high number of people, particularly in a quote unquote industry where we're supposed to experience joy. That's one of the fruit of the Spirit. And we're supposed to experience peace and freedom and rest. For 71% to be burned out, so something is wrong. That's indicative of a problem. 57% of church leaders say they would leave ministry, they would do something different if they knew something better to do where they could earn income. So that many church leaders every week, as they are engaging the people that they are leading, are secretly suffering and would leave ministry if they could only do something else. A 2006 survey of 1,100 pastors in California, every one of them, every single one knew at least one pastor who had left ministry because of burnout. So even if maybe you're not viewing the symptoms and you're not here for you, you probably know somebody working in church or leading a ministry that is on the road to burning out. So as we get going, what is burnout? Periods of stress are completely normal. Especially when you're leading a church, you're leading people. They've got so many things on their mind, so many things that they expect from you as their leader. Even if you're leading a business on the outside, if you've got customers and you've got clients and you've got people in your organization, that comes with strain. And if we think about the physics of an object, if there's prolonged stress on something, that causes that object to bend and be permanently disfigured. And stress for us emotionally and spiritually and physically is the same sort of thing. Long periods of prolonged stress that go undealt with, where the stress continues and continues, is going to distort who we are, how we respond to God, and how we respond to people. And we are entering the Christmas season. The Christmas season is the time of the year when everything catches fire. We're preparing for the Creasters, the Christmas and Easter people, to come and to be part of what we do. And that adds to the demand, it adds to the stress, it adds to the preparation. Moses, in Exodus chapter 18, he found this out the hard way. So Moses, he's leading the Israelites, and they are coming to him with every single problem that they have, every single dispute, every single bit of advice. So there are long lines formed day and night behind Moses to seek out his wisdom and his advice. And thankfully, due to the wisdom of Moses' father-in-law, he saw that Moses could not keep this up, that this was not a good situation, and it was going to be a problem for him. And so what his father said is, enable other people to lead. Break this down into smaller things so that only the most important matters come to you. See, the reality is that the people that we serve and the people that we lead, they don't think about the 14 people who've been in our office before them that day. They don't think about the message that you're writing. They don't think about the hospital visits that you have to make. They don't think about the families with needs that are coming to your office to ask for benevolence. They don't think about the staff and the volunteer issues that demand time. And so for us, as we're leading, breaks just don't happen. And for us, this is compounded by technology. Now in our pocket, we have a device that allows people 24/7 access to us, either by text message, by Facebook, by Twitter, by Periscope, by any one of innumerable apps and programs. People can make contact with us. So even if it's not with you directly, if somebody posts on their Facebook that they are under duress, that affects you as a church leader. So burnout is emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual exhaustion caused by prolonged and excessive stress. It's an extended process. Burnout does not happen overnight. So if you're following along on the worksheet that I sent you, then you can fill in that definition. I'm going to repeat it. If you did not get the worksheet, go to perkinsevents.com, and underneath the tab for this webinar, the worksheet should be available, and you can fill it in. It's just something to guide your notes. Burnout is emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual exhaustion caused by prolonged and excessive stress. And it's an extended process. It does not happen overnight. So if you begin to develop some of these characteristics, know that it's like anything else. And this is the symptoms are sometimes a long time coming. So some of the characteristics of burnout are these: prolonged anxiety or depression. Just like we talked about with the pastoral statistics at the beginning, at the top of this webinar, 71% burned out and depressed. That is one of the key characteristics of burnout. Here's a terrible one when you begin to lead people: developing a cynical attitude. So when somebody comes to you, you're not taking them at face value any longer. You're wondering what is motivating them? What's behind this? It's when you have the, oh yeah, right, I bet, on top of the response that you have to people. Feelings of worthlessness and failure, particularly because of shame that's exposed because you realize that you're not able to meet everyone's needs. You're not Superman or Superwoman. Nothing left to give. And because you have nothing left to give, you avoid engagement. I know when I was suffering burnout and it was getting worse and worse, I would sit in my office until right up till service time started. So something that I used to enjoy and used to love, which was milling about the breezeway of the church and engaging people and talking and having a cup of coffee, that became draining and a burden. I just felt like I had nothing left to give. Paranoia and suspicion. Maybe saying the words, "No one appreciates me. No one realizes what I do for them." This is symptomatic of burnout. Engaging in numbing behaviors. And numbing behaviors can be things that are seemingly as harmless as just watching TV and vegging in front of the TV. Doing that once in a while, I get it. That's fun. That's play. But when you're doing that several nights of the week and you're just staring at the TV to avoid thinking about pressing issues, that's a numbing behavior. Staring at your phone and phone games or Twitter, looking at Facebook, all of these are numbing behaviors, and they can lead to even worse, developing an addiction to pornography, because you just want a time where you're released from having to think about the issues of the people that you're leading. Turning to alcohol and using that so that you don't have to listen to that inner voice that's telling you there's something else that needs to be done. Lowered productivity. This isn't just a loss of energy, which that comes as part of this as well, but it's a loss of motivation. That having the inability to engage in the tasks or things that need to get done. A lot of people burning out overcompensate with confidence, to hide, to put on that mask. We know what people want to see from us. So we put on that smile and we go, and everything's good. And this is going to be the best weekend ever and the best Christmas season that we've ever had, when on the inside, you're dying because there's no energy that is feeding that confidence. Frequent illness. You may find that you're getting sick more and more often. Even cold and flu season, maybe you're not able to get well as quick as you expect to or you'd like to. So as church leaders, though, as followers of Jesus, we counter these symptoms by saying, I'm going to gut this out. I am strong in Jesus. I can do all things through Christ, so I am going to endure the depression and the attitude and the numbing behaviors, because that's what somebody in Jesus is supposed to do. It's what we tell our people to do. And we convince ourselves that we're going to try to follow Jesus better, because that is the solution to the problem. It usually means doing more. And so in a day that's already packed, I'm going to wake up at 4 o'clock to do the things that I'm leaving undone, or to pray, or to read my Bible, or to have a conversation with my spouse. And this becomes a cycle, because now you're losing more of the rest you need, and there's more demands on you. And so the burnout gets quicker and quicker and quicker. It's not an act of selfishness to take care of yourself in ministry. If you think about the picture that's on the screen of the oxygen mask coming down from the ceiling of a plane, if you've ever been on a plane, when the flight attendant says, here are the instructions for the oxygen mask, and they say, if you are traveling with small kids, it is imperative that you put the mask on yourself first. Now, is that selfish? Is that selfish when you understand that in the time that you are putting the mask on your child, if you haven't put it on yourself, that you could pass out, and then everybody passes out, everybody's oxygen deprived? So if you're leading a church and you're burning out, and you don't evaluate or develop awareness of how are you supposed to care for yourself, then you're like the parent that is busily trying to put oxygen masks on their 5 kids while trying to breathe from a depressurized cabin. So because I see this so often in church leaders and ministry leaders and volunteers, here are 5 practices that you can employ to avoid burnout. Here are 5 practices that are the equivalent of you putting the oxygen mask on yourself and taking a nice, long, deep breath before you take care of those around you. The first is understanding time use. I know we as church leaders, feels good to be the hero, right? Productivity feeds our role-based identity. If I'm doing more or if I'm doing it better than somebody else, that makes me feel good temporarily. And so we're stuck making people's response the source of our worth. So understanding the use of time goes beyond using a calendar, although that is a fantastic first step. If you don't use a calendar to block out your time and to make sure that you have adequate time to prepare a message so that you're not doing it at 2 in the morning on Friday night and ignoring your family on Saturday, if you're not already doing that, get a Google Calendar. Use the calendar on your phone so that you can look at your week and say, I've got too much packed in. But understanding the use of time also goes to the point that we often become directed by the urgency of a task, or we get involved in the latest thing because everyone else is doing it, so I have to do it in my ministry or my church or my business or my organization as well. And so the contributing factor to burnout here is excessive workload. You just keep adding without giving anything away. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to know what your time frame is to get there so that you can develop intentional actions in order to achieve your goals. A great way to do this, here is a tool that I use with my clients, whether it's in discipleship or whether it's in leadership, anywhere, is the idea of a mind map. If you've not seen a mind map before, if you're maybe listening to this on the phone, let me describe what a mind map is. It's just a way to brainstorm that also provides some organization to what you're thinking about. That way you don't have to limit yourself to a linear list and cut off thinking in one area while you're thinking of another. And so the way you structure a mind map, for instance, if you're looking at the screen, there's a little oval with the word time in. So I'm going to think about, how do I use my time? What are the demands on my time? Where do I want to be using my time? And so for me, this is I did this real quick. This is a very simple, probably not even all the areas, but for me, here are some of the areas I would use my time. I've got work demands, I've got recreation, I've got family time, I've got writing. I love to write. I've got a blog. I'm working on 2 books because I like to write so much. So those are demands on my time. Those are places that I either have to or want to spend my time. But then you can continue the mind map, because now on each of the subcircles, I can continue to get more and more specific. So I'm just looking at the writing circle. So where are the places that I write? Well, I've got my blog, I've got content for coaching, I've got my book, and there should be an S on that. I've got magazine that I write for. I've got guest posts on other people's blogs. There's a lot of places that I'm spending time writing. You could even continue that down, and for instance, under blog, I could put, how many times a week that I blog. So you can put as much detail. But the value of the mind map is you can write things down as you think of them. So if I'm in the middle of thinking about writing, but then into my mind pops, oh, I've got this work demand, I can go over and fill in something for work. Then it gives you a nice visual representation. I can say, are my actions aligned with my professional, my personal, my spiritual goals? If I am off balance in a particular area, if I've got 24 lines coming from one of the circles, but I have nothing coming from the recreation circle, I realize that I might be a little off balance. Is the amount of time that I'm trying to spend in different areas, is that healthy? If it's not, then you can talk about making some necessary endings, or enforcing boundaries you already have, or learning the most dreaded word of all, no. maybe having to help people deal with their disappointment and the things they're going through on their own. The second practice to avoid burnout is developing intentional relationships. When I was burning out, I was trying to be everyone's friend. I was trying to secure a false sense of significance by the number of relationships or the amount of affirmation that I was getting. And so anyone I saw, I was asking if they wanted to do lunch, if they wanted to come by the office. And so I was very scattered in my relationships. I was also looking for some cheerleaders, because cheerleaders would give you that temporary boost of adrenaline. So I was looking for that. 70% of church leaders report that they have no one close that they can confide in. And so how this contributes to burnout is through conflict and insecurity. One of the pastors that I've worked with, he was struggling in his marriage. This was taking a lot of his emotional energy away. And so he confessed his problems to one of the elders that was a friend of his. Instead of helping to draw up a plan of help in the area of marriage where nothing immoral was going on, it was just conflict that couldn't be resolved, this elder went to the board and petitioned for this pastor to be fired, because pastors shouldn't have problems. So it's no wonder that 70% of church leaders report that they don't have anybody to confide in. So here's some questions to consider. When you think about your inner circle of relationships, what do you see? Who in your inner circle is not tied to your results? When people are tied to your results, they're less likely to tell you truth. Who in your inner circle are people that are outside of your church or your organization system? Because again, if they're tied to the system, the way they deal with you is going to be for their best interests. Who do you feel safe and vulnerable with? Who do you tell the truth? Who do you know that's going to extend you compassion rather than judgment? Who do you process success or failure in your relationships with? How intentional are you? Do you also know whether you're an extrovert or an introvert? The myth about extroverts and introverts are that extroverts like relationships and introverts don't, and that's nothing further from the truth. Extroverts gain energy from relationships, and that's why they seek more of them out. Introverts, relationships take energy, and that's why they tend to isolate themselves. But some of the best leaders I know, some of the best speakers, some of the best interactors with people are introverts, because they tend to be thoughtful. Do you use multiple relationships to hide, or do you hide from relationships? So who's looking out for you? The third practice to avoid burnout is delegation. And again, we like to be the Superman or Superwoman, and we actually like to be Jesus to people. And so we take that literally, where we think we've got to be the focal point and the source of their solutions. This is because of insecurity and our need to control. And so we seek an unhealthy sense of self from our role. So the contributing factor to burnout is it's never enough, because even though we're making people come to us as the source of the problem, we resent them for it. I wrote an article about 3 churches, and they were all evidencing great fruit. The commonality between all 3 of these church leaders was not denomination. It was not location. It was not even size of the church. The commonality was that each of them knew what they were good at, what their limitations were, and they got over themselves enough to delegate. Whether it was delegating to volunteers because they couldn't afford staff, or whether they were able to hire staff. So for you, questions would be, what are you good at? What brings you energy and joy to do? And what do you need to get off your plate? Who is ready for you to pass the baton to? Who can you develop as a leader to equip them for ministry? Avoid micromanaging, give praise, and help people succeed. That's delegation. The fourth thing is develop awareness of your motivation. I know that all of us, because we work in church, we would say my motivation is to glorify Jesus. And I get that. And I know at some level that's true. But sometimes we function a lot differently than it's Jesus we're trying to glorify. We spend a lot of time trying to build our own kingdom rather than the kingdom of God. So you might be driven by growth. But here's a little bit of truth. If you are insecure with 150 people, you're still going to be insecure with 300 people. Maybe you want people to like you. Well, if that's your motivation, you're going to make compromises. The Bible talks about the teacher that gives people what their itching ears want to hear. That's about affirmation. Have you defined what success looks like for you and why that is? If you were completely honest, what's your motivation? And on the worksheet I gave you is a great way. No one's ever going to see that. You can burn it after this. Although I hope you put it in a notebook and read it in a few weeks. What's your motivation? Are you trying to create your own security, control, and approval? Or are you secure that you are approved and by Jesus, that he's your source of affirmation? When you feel anxiety, that's a symptom. Depression, it's a symptom. Burnout, this is a symptom of a misplaced identity where our motivation comes from something other than Jesus. And by the way, there's no judgment here at all. I've done this. I've made every mistake. And that's why I'm offering this totally free for any church leader that wants to come and attend this, because that's where my heart is. The last practice to avoid burnout is balance. Living a life of balance means letting some things go. Here's something to write down. Losing balance will be more painful than letting go. If you fall off the beam, it's more painful than if you jump off and just let go of trying to maintain balance. Contributing factor is that this never ends. Ministry never ends if your only focus is doing ministry. We experience all the negative things of people's lives, their divorces, their deaths, everything bad that happens gets filtered through us. So what are you doing out of the office? When do you schedule your play? When do you schedule time with your family? If you were making your mind map, would your mind map be weighted in the direction of work and ministry? What are you celebrating? That's an amazing discipline, is the discipline to celebrate things that are happening in your life. How do you maintain communion with God? Is that passing? A huge percentage of pastors only study the Bible when it's time to prepare a message. That's pretty sad. What energizes you? One of the things that I'm going to give you after this webinar is a worksheet titled 3 Components of Healthy Change. It's a way to process. It's just a worksheet. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it's a worksheet to help you process where you're off balance and how you can make changes that are going to be healthy. Second thing I'm going to give you is, as you're dealing with burnout, nothing feeds burnout like comparison. Comparing yourself to the church down the street or the disciple next door or the pastor who's got it all together. So I'm going to send you an ebook called the 6 Destructive Traps of Comparison. And the last thing that I want to offer you is I just want to offer you a free 30-minute coaching session. No obligation, just to be able to take what you've seen here and to apply it to your life or to your ministry. We can accomplish a lot in 30 minutes. And I would love to get together with you. I'd love to have coffee and just sit and ask you some questions to help you get back to balance, to get back to having healthy relationships so that you can avoid burnout. Is your role in church your identity? Is that where you're getting your worth? Because it will fail you. It will definitely fail you in the long run. I am so happy that you came and joined this webinar. We're just about at the 30-minute mark. If you have a question that you'd love to ask me, type it in the chat box at the bottom. I'd love to be able to answer it, either here or I can answer it by email. So if you are interested in that free coaching, the offer is visible over on the right part of your screen. Just hit the contact Scott. It's going to take you to my website, a contact form. Just put in your phone number and I will give you a call either sometime this afternoon or sometime tomorrow morning. And we'll set up a time to either get together in person, or if you're out of the Orlando area, we can Skype and we can talk about that. I want to be able to offer you as much value as possible. So I hope you're well. And I hope you got something out of this webinar. And I'm getting a few questions come in. Because we're at the 30-minute mark, I'm just going to go ahead and answer those by email so that we can have a discussion that way and I can honor the question that you're asking me. So God bless you. And I pray that your holiday season, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, even through Valentine's Day, is productive, but that you take care of yourself in the meantime. God bless you.